located in. Semantics aside, our port is the most critical piece of infrastructure in Alaska, and we are on our way to rebuilding and modernizing it. With the renaming and the ongoing construction at the port, we are on the path to fully restore it and make sure 90% of Alaskans can still get the food and supplies that they need. Food security for Alaskans is absolutely crucial. The importance of the uniform design and tariff are key to the long-term success of the port modernization project. And I believe the Assembly and I are in agreement on these matters. And finally, I would also like to briefly talk about the proposed changes to the scofflaw ordinance. Fully repealing that important public safety tool isn't good policy. After discussions with members of the Anchorage Assembly, I believe we have come to an agreement to make sure the Anchorage Police Department can keep those who commit repeated traffic crimes from driving and endangering fellow residents, while also making sure no one is unfairly targeted by the steep penalties of the current version of the law. This compromise shows how we can work together to make our city safer and stronger. I'm happy that the Anchorage Assembly and I are able to work together to figure this out for the greater good of our city. Now, with that, I'd like to take some questions.
I guess we'll start off with Wes early. Hey, Mr. Mayor, I was reading in the Anchorage Daily News from an interview that you did, I assume yesterday, about a proposal to start paying for plane tickets for homeless people who may not be going into shelters. I'm curious how far along that plan is, and if you discussed it at all with the Assembly or the wider administration.
Well, the history of it is we did this last summer. It was administered by the Salvation Army, and I believe we had 11 people that exercised that option. It was to the lower 48 only. And this year we're going to have to, because we have no shelter space, a large shelter for them to go to, we're going to have to be far more robust. So when people approach us and want to go to someplace warm, or they want to go to some town where they have family or friends that can take care of them, if they choose to go there, we'll support that.
And I guess just a follow-up, have there been sort of studies looking into the homeless population as to who actually has family outside, or who is, originally from Anchorage? I imagine a lot of people who are homeless in Anchorage are from Anchorage, and there wouldn't be.
Well, they probably are, but at the end of the day, it's where they want to go is what matters here. They're going to have a choice to stay warm this winter, and that's the choice that we're giving them. And I think a ticket this morning to Los Angeles is about $286. It costs us $100 plus or minus a few dollars every day to house someone, and we don't have a place to put them, a large shelter this winter. And remember what the objective here is. It's sad that we had to get to this, but we're here to save lives. That's my job. And we this last year was the most deadly year in history for people who are homeless, dying on the streets. And now this coming year, this winter, we're looking at possibly even doubling that. So I have a moral imperative here, and that's to save lives. And if that means giving them a few $100s for an airline ticket to go where they want to go, I'm going to do that.
And I'm sorry, but to go back to my first question, how far along is that plan?
I directed Alexis Johnson a few weeks ago to start looking at this plan. It's not difficult. We did it last year. It's not difficult to administer. Someone says, I want to go to Los Angeles or San Diego or Seattle or Kansas. It's not our business. My job is to make sure they don't die on Anchorage streets. So we can administer the program, and it's not difficult.
Mr. Mayor, can you explain a little bit about who, with the target population for the Golden Lion, and whether it's specific program to try and get them into more supportive housing later on, or permanent housing later on? Who is this going to serve?
Yeah, that's a little bit down in the weeds, so I'm going to have Alexis Johnson answer that if she'll come to the podium.
Hi, good morning. Alexis Johnson, Housing and Homeless Coordinator. So as far as the Golden Lion, our target population remains the same, which is people who have mobility challenged, highly vulnerable within the city. We've been working a lot with complex care, Catholic social services to get people out of that shelter and get them into longer term housing at the Golden Lion. And we know that the Golden Lion is short term, roughly a year, year and a half, and we're going to try and get them into more permanent supportive housing in the long run. But it's basically to decompress the complex care facility at the former sockeye and to move people through the pipeline to get them into housing.
And assuming the assembly passes that ordinance and the contract with Henning tonight, I mean, you guys anticipate you know the 80 people that are going to be moved over in the next couple of days?
I don't believe that we know all 80, but we do have a long list of people that are ready to facilitate that building and move in tomorrow. So that if we get the vote tonight, which I hope that we will, we'll have people moving in first thing in the morning. Thank you.
Lauren Maxwell, KTUU.
Yeah, excuse me. I'd like to go back to the plane ticket idea, and that is just could you clarify like a couple things? A, is it just to send people to the lower 48, or would we also consider sending people to different parts of Alaska? And has a funding source been identified for this?
We, in reverse order, the funding source has not been identified. We don't anticipate it to be a large amount, but again, we win this battle by a lot of small additions. And if we can get even just several people out of the state that, or out of the city, and get them to a climate where they're at least safe from freezing to death. It's well worth it. I mean, again, we're in the business of trying to save lives here. I can't believe that 2 years into this, we're at this. I think we need to remember here that, as you ask about money, in the last 3 years, the city has spent $161 million on homelessness in this city, and we don't even have a shelter. So a shelter would answer this. This is why I came in over 2 years ago with the idea of a large shelter. People didn't like it, but I asked one question: is what we have now worse or better than a large shelter that would be intensively managed by professionals? And I think a large shelter intensively managed by professionals would have been a far better idea than and created a far better situation than we have right now. But that was then. This is now. We're moving forward, and I'm left with these far less than optimal options.
So just to clarify as a follow-up, these would be one-way tickets to destinations outside. I guess my question would be,
well, it wouldn't be just outside.
It would be in Alaska as well.
It's where the person wants to go.
Okay. What about the concern that people will say you're just pushing our problems onto someone else? How would you address that?
Well, I hate to get into a tit for tat here, but we know other municipalities send their homeless here. We have 40% of the state's population in the city of Anchorage. We have 65% of the homeless population. And the taxpayers to whom I'm responsible to can't keep footing the entire bill. We need a statewide solution to a statewide problem. This is a statewide problem. The Assembly and I went to the legislature this last session and asked for about $25 million to help us stand up a shelter and to help us operate that shelter. We didn't get that money. Now it's a money problem. Notwithstanding the fact that we spent $161 million in the previous 36 months, winter is coming. I'm left with these options. I would rather not do this at all. But again, we need an API, a very robust API. We need those kind of beds. We need the beds that Providence is starting to provide and the Salvation Army is starting to provide. But this is a numbers game. This is a volume game, and that we need to win at, or other people will die. And that's my focus, is to take care of people. But I also need to take care of the taxpayer. The taxpayer doesn't want to see what I see every day on the street. Homeless people who appear to be visibly homeless, misbehaving. I see it. I get photos sent to me routinely. I don't like it. But at the end of the day, we have the laws that we could enforce if the federal courts would allow us to do that. And they will allow us to do that once we provide enough shelter beds. That's roughly 750 beds. If I can get to that aggregate of a shelter bed, then I can enforce our municipal code, which I can compel people to not live in our public spaces, on our bike trails, in our parks, on our sidewalks. What they are doing is illegal often, not always. But I can enforce, but right now I can't enforce the law. So that's why we're seeing on the streets what we're seeing.
Sean Donaldson, ABC Fox.
So how does one be able to talk about like how this ticket process works for homeless people wanting to leave Anchorage?
I'll have Alexis Johnson answer that when she did this. She operated this last year, supervised this last year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alexis Johnson. So last year we had people approach us at Centennial that said, hey, I've been stuck up here. I came up for a fishing season and I came back to Anchorage. I didn't have enough money to get home. I would like to go home. We reach out to the person that they were living with prior to the time that is willing to receive them and house them and take care of them. And so we connect them with the Salvation Army. They purchase a plane ticket, they get them to the airport and send them off and make sure that communication's there. This program has been running successfully. We haven't had a large exodus of people, but it is just another option for clients to have. And so we just want to make it more robust and really give it to more nonprofits in the city to say, hey, if you do have a client that approaches you, here's the process and here's how you get them to their final destination. And so that's just something that we want to offer in the city as a client choice. Thank you.
So pivoting to tonight's assembly meeting, they're also set to take public comment on a pretty sizable city code change that would enable building of different housing units. I'm just curious your take on Mr. Cross and Ms. Zalatel's proposal to change.
I'm going to wait for them to work out the details. That is complex. The last Title 21 change, I think, took 10 years. When I came into office 2 years ago, I directed Adam Trombley, who ran that department, to get us to as many Title 21 changes as we can to facilitate the building of the living spaces that we need, the homes, the apartments, whatever. We made some changes from that process. But a very large whole-scale rewrite of Title 21. Title 21 is how you develop your land. That's very complex, like very complex. And I don't think we want to go willy-nilly into that without a lot of introspection and running it through all the departments. The department heads know how to do this. As long as it goes through the departments and it takes some time to do it right, then I'll support it. But right now, I'm not even really looking at what they're proposing right now because it's very complex and it's going to take a lot of time.
And I guess to follow up, I think whether you're homeless or you're paying rent, I think that it's pretty clear that Anchorage has a housing problem, a housing shortage.
Yes, we do.
Can you talk a little bit about, in not taking into account the Title 21 changes, sort of ways that Anchorage could facilitate more housing?
Well, Title 21 again is part of it. The recent jump in interest rates are problematic. At the end of the day, we just don't direct the marketplace to build things. They do that in what we call Marxist countries. It never turns out well, obviously. We want the marketplace to make these decisions for us, and it's government's job to the degree that we can get out of their way so these projects create profit for the people that are willing to risk their money to build them. That's our job, and quite frankly, it's too expensive to build an identical home in Anchorage as it is in, say, Palmer or Wasilla. So we need to look at how they do it and how we do it and see where we can make improvements. And that's essential, because people say, how does building an $800,000 or $900,000 home help the homeless situation? Well, it's a pipeline, because when you build that, someone moves from a $500,000 home and they move up, and that's the way our capitalist economy needs to work, and that's the best model. Right now, I think government is a little bit too much in the way, and I think that's the impetus for these Title 21 changes, to relook at some of the changes we've made in the last several years and maybe pare them back, and I support that kind of notion. So.
what's changed that the Sullivan's not on the table this year as a kind of shelter of last resort the way it was last year?
Well, one, it's very expensive to operate. And two, you couldn't imagine almost a worse designed building for keeping anywhere from 200 to 500 homeless people in. I think that building needs to get back into the public realm. It needs to be an entertainment venue. We need hockey there. We need rock concerts there. We need to get that back to normal, and that's what I'm hearing from the public. My job is to listen to the public. And on a more personal note, I'll just say I think the Fairview community has paid their share of their price long enough. And if you were ever at an assembly meeting in the last 3 years, you saw how they didn't like it. And again, I think I was in the Sullivan yesterday looking it over. It's cleaned out. It's immaculate. The engineers have looked at it, and other than some lighting issues. And it's not that they're broken. It's just that it's old style lighting, ballast, not LED type lighting. It's in very good shape. It's very clean. And I'm looking forward to the day when that gets back to what we all know is normal.
Have there been any kind of contracts or programs confirmed for like the winter season, whether that's hockey or?
I know of no scheduling yet of events in that facility yet. No, but we are very hopeful.
Back to the Golden Lion,
Mhm.
a lot of constituents and residents in that neighborhood for so long were very opposed to putting anything in that building, and I know you yourself for a long time felt that way. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that evolved and how you changed course?
Well, I actually haven't changed course. The commitment was the original purpose of that building through the ML&P sale proceeds was that would be a drug treatment center. And even when I was campaigning for nearly a year, I looked at that and I go, a drug treatment center on one of the worst, most unsafe intersections in the city. So we're going to have an outpatient drug treatment center there. I says that's people are going to die. They're gonna stumble into traffic. It's as you come from as you head north, it's a 45 mile an hour speed limit there, and we know what it's like. It's dark, it's icy, it's the middle of winter, and it's a two-phase light between that center and 300 yards away. There's a McDonald's, and so you do this, and in between there's this funnel of traffic. It made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It was a death trap. But now we're at the model that we're standing up as a rooming house, and then the type of people that are going to live there, we've mitigated that. I mean, could it still happen? Yes, certainly. But that was a formula for disaster. And again, we're in the business of saving lives, so you don't put people who are drug or alcohol addled right on an intersection, a high speed intersection at night in the wintertime. It just didn't make sense. So I said I will never allow it to be a drug treatment center. That's what I said. So I haven't changed. We came up with the rooming house because we went to Section 5 of Title 21. We says, oh, well, this is what we can do with it. We can turn it into a rooming house. So the administration started down that path to use those 80 rooms for something productive in this homeless space.
And can we talk more about the Golden Lion and the resources that will be for the people who are those 8 people that will be in the Golden Lion and when they will live there?
Yeah, again, Alexis Johnson can answer that.
Thanks so much for the question. So resources will be available for the tenants living at the Golden Lion. They are not provided on site, but people who have case managers or any type of, therapeutic counselors, they're more than welcome to join them in their rented unit. And those are the services that we're not planning to offer on site, but that will be available if a client needs that. We're going to start moving in people tomorrow if we get a yes vote on the lease agreement and a yes vote on the $250,000 grant. We'll have to meet with assembly leadership and figure out a new plan moving forward. At that point, they would not be supporting housing, and I just don't foresee that. But I think ongoing conversations would need to be had about a new process for how do we fill the Golden Line. Thank you. Absolutely, Zach.
trip back and forth.
Yeah.
Member Zalatel at the last meeting kind of raised a bunch of sharp criticisms that what was being presented was a assisted living facility, and I think ADLs was kind of the word that
Mhm.
a lot of the consternation. Were you guys able to meet with Vice Chair Zalatel and kind of work through some of the competing visions or some of the competing ideas of how that was going to happen? I mean, do you see a path towards yes, or do you think anticipate the same kind of skirmish happening over the ADL language?
So we did have a work session last week, and our lawyers came to the table. Meg, most of the assembly came, and we did work through some of the challenges. We had Henning meet or attempt to meet with some people from the state to make sure that their operations plan was, not operating as an assisted living facility. And so we've worked through a lot of those challenges. And I think, based on the meeting ending a little early, that we kind of all came to the table and kind of agreed that we're ready for this to be housing and we're ready to turn it on. Thanks.
We have time for 2 more questions. Mayor, final statements?
I just want to say thanks for doing this. We hope to have a little more press availability going forward for you guys. It's good to get the word out to the public on where we're at and what we're doing. And I just want to say thank you for coming in today. So thank you very much.